Okay. So, get started. So it's a bit warm today. So we're going to do some cooling-ish, cooling-ish practices. So just finding your body and connecting to the floor. So just feeling the bones rest in the hammocks of the fascia. And just let the back of the pelvis, the back of the ribs, and the back of the head just broaden. And we're just going to roll the tongue. So just curling the edges of your tongue so you can make a tube with your tongue. So it's a lovely yogic practice, cooling breathing, cooling breath. And you can just breathe in round this rolled tongue. And all you do is just curl the edges up. And breathe in and breathe out. And what this helps to do is just cool the air as it moves through the mouth, basically. And like I say, it's an old one, it's an old yogic practice, but just brings our awareness back into the length of the breath. When we're messing around with breathing like this, we can cause it to just go a little bit longer, which helps the nervous system to calm down a little bit. The out breath, because it's a little bit longer, helps the spine to feel longer, helps the body to feel heavier. Anybody? Good morning. So just allowing this breath to just roll in and out or wash in and out. And each outward breath, just feeling that the tummy can drop back towards the spine. Maybe there's a hollowing out underneath the ribs. Maybe there's a sinking back just underneath the jaw in the hyoid process on the front of the neck. So just let the breath return to normal. And we're just letting the arms come up over the body, feeling like somebody's holding on to the fingers, just pulling the fingers up towards the sky. And a nice breath in and the breath out, just dropping the shoulders back onto the floor, just dropping the arms back through the shoulder sockets. And we're just reconnecting with that broadness of the ribs. We can sometimes get a little bit drawn around the front of the body. And then from here, we're just going to drop the right heel into the ground, let the toes lift. And just sliding the heel away and letting the left index finger and thumb be drawn up towards the top of your mat. We're keeping the ribs back and in towards the spine. And then just sliding the heel. When the arm comes back to center, we can change over sides. Nice heavy heel on the right side, left side. and the right arm coming up and over. So it's opposite arm to leg, just lengthening away. We're looking to find the space behind the tummy button, long down into the pelvis and all the way out into the inside of the heel and the big toe joint pulling away. We've got this index finger, knuckle and the thumb all being drawn up and away out of the socket. The ribs can go long. And we'll just do once more on each side, seeing if we can really get the leg to pull the side of the waist open. You'll feel that when the tummy just sort of above the pubic bone or sort of starts to get drawn back towards the spine. It's stabilizing for the lower spine. And the same for the arm as it comes out of the socket. It brings the opposite side of the ribs down to ground and helps us to open up into the underarm, which is useful because there's lots of fluid flow there. And when the weather's super warm, it can get a little bit sluggish and a bit slow. And if you know that that side of the ribs leaves the floor, you can just place a hand onto the costal margin, the pointy bit on the front of the rib. And we'll come back to the center. So just taking the arms up over the head towards the floor at the top of your mat. We're keeping the ribs pulled back into the ground, feeling like the index fingers are being pulled away towards the wall at the top of you. And then just finding the space to make those lovely big circles. Feel like there's weights in the hands, which send the long arm bones back through their sockets, through the ribs into the spine. That's where the strength for them comes from. Opportunist. And again, we're just looking for that as the ribs come back towards the ground and the weight of the arms goes up over the head. We're looking for this lovely softening and lengthening that happens into the underarm area and down into the side of the ribs. And just noticing as the arms come out to the side, how that feels on the front of the chest. It's nice to pause at certain places, particularly if we feel that there's restriction or tightness coming through the arm into the chest. That could be anywhere. But it's nice to pause and breathe into that. And just helps the tissues to allow themselves to soften and respond. So just making this our final circle. So the next time the arms come back down, we're going to put the hands onto the front of the hips. And just finding the hip bones. And we're looking for that nice orientation of the pelvis. So you don't want a curve that's so deep you can drive a bus underneath it, but you don't want to be flattening out into the floor either. You find the sit bones, pull those down into the ground. And we just get this lovely space at the small of the back. We want to find those uninhibited curves of the spine. What does it feel like at the neck spine? Have we got a curve there? You know, what does it feel like in the rib spine? Have we got a curve there? You know, we want to notice these things. We don't want a flat back of the ribs, because that also means that we're going to have a flat lumbers as well. So we send the drawbridge of the sacrum away, send the tail away, so we get this nice lumbar curve, and then we find the curve of the thoracic and the curve of the neck. And it might take a little bit of getting used to what these curves feel like when they're in an appropriate state, particularly if we've got ourselves into habits like stretching out the neck or flattening out the lumbers. So from here, with our hands on our hips, we're going to make sure that the hips don't move. And we're just pulling down through the long little toe side on the right foot. So the knee just drops out to the side, but the foot anchoring into the floor, the hip anchoring into the floor, means that the leg is never hanging out of the socket. Big toe joint and the inside of the heel pulling down into the floor draws the knee back to the center. And then we can repeat on the other side. And coming back to the center. So we start to feel that the leg is connected into the deep waist. Can we feel the structures on the inside of the hip bone? And can we start to have an awareness of the structures that lay on the inside of the spine? So there's big muscles in there. And you might find that one side is easier than the other. But we're making sure that the hips don't tilt from side to side, nor are we flattening out, which will tilt the hips in towards you. So next time we come back to center, we're just going to play with that, find the feet. Feet get pulled down into the ground, and that will tilt the hips in towards you. And we're just noticing, feeling the tummy dropping back towards the spine. And just noticing just the changes in muscle tone, changes around the bones, changes in weight distribution through the feet. As we move through that rocking movement, release it and let it go. And let the pelvis go back in the opposite direction. And that will deepen the lumbers. So be careful with that. It's just following the movement as far as your body wants to go. And what we find after a while of this rocking backwards and forwards, it's almost like one of those toys, isn't it, with the water in, that you can just watch the water flow backwards and forwards. But as that backwards and forwards movement happens, we just feel that we can expand these movements. So the tilting in towards us, we can follow that and let the pelvis start to leave the floor, let the low spine start to leave the floor. And conversely, when we're going back in the opposite direction and we get the deeper lumbar curve, starting to notice changes that are happening further up the spine into the ribs, maybe a little bit more length in the neck, before letting that movement go and just going in the other direction again. And eventually what we start to get is a bridge pose. We're keeping the ribs back towards the spine, particularly if you're a serial rib flarer. Notice if the hips are level. Notice if one side's working harder than the other. And again, keep this quite a fluid, quite a flowing movement. As we just notice the undulations of the spine. That buttons into your breathing at some point. It may be that the breathing stopped for a minute, just because we're concentrating on a different activity. We're just noticing where the breath can go. So the next time we come down, and just taking your time, I'm going to take the elbows out to the sides. Let the pointy parts of the elbows pull down into the ground. Palms can face each other over the chest. And we're just pulling down with the feet, letting the knees roll. And again, we're looking for the leg that connects to the underside of the ribs, side of the waist. And then pulling down into the feet, coming back to center. And then feet and pelvis. And again, just using the interface of the foot, we'll come back to the center, we'll have one more on each side. And just noticing how when we've pulled down through the feet, how that helps to connect the legs back through the pelvis into the underside of the ribs. And again, you can use that big toe to get a stretch through the front of the thigh if it feels good. That's what's needed. And coming back to the center, we're just going to give the knees a hug. Have a little rock from side to side. And then we're just going to let the arms just rest at the side of the body. So find the weight of the hands, pointy parts of the elbows, shoulder blades. We can leave the knees just floating in towards you. Give the feet a nice shake if that feels good. And all we're going to do from here is just with the left toe, just dipping into the puddle at the end of your mat. So again, we're looking to find that heavy back of the pelvis. We've got the curve of the lumbars. We've just been playing with those. So we know what they feel like. The ribs can draw back towards the spine. We know what that feels like. If you don't trust your ribs, I don't trust mine. You can rest your fingers there really lightly. If you don't trust your pelvis to be in the right alignment either, if you think it's going to tilt in towards you or it's going to tilt away from you too heavily, you can rest your fingers lightly there. But we're just looking to pull together all those different movements that we've just done. Can we feel the integrated limbs, the arms coming into the spine, the legs coming into the spine? And we're just looking to do those toe taps. We'll just do one more on each side. And then we're just going to bring the soles of the feet together, just resting on the ground, and let the knees just drop out to the sides. Long little toe sides get pulled down into the ground. That gets us a nice stretch on the inside of the thighs. And then just bringing the knees back to center. I'm going to come over onto whichever side is comfortable for you. Find your way up into your square pose. So just having the knees underneath the hips and the hands just a little bit further forward than the shoulder. And the reason we do that is just to find that pointy part of the elbow and let it swing round and look back towards the thigh. It just helps to drop the shoulders away from the ears. And we're lengthening the index fingers and the middle fingers. Find the center of the palm as it starts to drop down into the ground. As you find the root of the thumb and the first thumb knuckle, as they pull down into the ground, they should give you a bit of lengthening down the sides of the neck. And the outer edges of the hands lift the ribs. So long little finger side really helps to get that length down the side of the ribs, down the side of the waist into the hips, and sends the body weight back down through the thighs into the shins. So it's finding ourselves in our square pose is such a useful tool for just letting the body unwind. We're thinking about the drawbridge of the sacrum, the sit bones just being drawn away towards the wall behind you. So just again, exactly the same as your bridge pose, it's no different. As we feel this rippling along the inside of the spine, when we lift the sit bones away, send them towards the wall behind you, yes, there is a lengthening away, and that helps to lengthen out through the lumbars, through the ribs. It gives us this, lengthening movement where the head might start to come up. And of course, then there's the opposite movement to that, where the nose comes into the back of the head, the hands pull into the floor, and we start to fold in on ourselves. But again, this folding in comes from just following that movement of the spine when we're creating the conditions for pulling down into the ground. Feet get pulled down, hands get pulled down into the ground, takes us into something that we might call, that looks a bit like a cat pose. But we're mindful of each individual vertebrae, we're mindful of each segment of the spine and its orientation. We know that the ribs in our cat pose, that is their natural orientation. So the head will naturally drop towards the floor, the tail will naturally curl under, and the ribs will naturally lift because they're all part of the primary curve, which is what we were born with. So it's very easy for those parts of the spine to move. So can we be mindful of the lumbars? Can we be mindful of the neck spine? And just take a little bit of time and care there to create a little bit more space, to create a little bit more length. So those parts of the spine move first before the ribs get involved, because the ribs are quite happy to go up towards the ceiling because that's their natural orientation. So conversely, when we're going in the opposite direction, when we're letting the crown and the head lengthen away, and we're letting the tail lengthen away towards the wall behind us, so we're going in two opposite directions, it's very easy at this point for the lumbars and the neck to just collapse into a soggy U shape, because that's their natural orientation, because they're the secondary curves, and they were developed by lifting our head and tilting and untilting the pelvis. So with that in mind, can we pay a little bit more attention to the thoracic so that we get a little bit more space and support through the rib spine? And then that also lengthens out into the inside of the neck and lengthens out into the inside of the tummy, the low spine. So we've got more support there. So it's not so much for a soggy U in the middle. We've got a lengthening and a support to the inside of the spine there. So again, we're just working through the spine, noticing different parts and how they work. Noticing parts that are easily accessible for us, but other parts that might be stiff and sticky and we skip over. Can we touch in with each individual vertebrae? Can we notice what the muscles feel like around each section? Some might be stiff and sticky, some might be a little bit grumpy. And then from here, we're just going to let the sit bones just be pulled back towards the wall behind you. Leave the hands where they are. And we're just coming back into our lovely child pose. So we let the nose come into the back of the head. And we let behind the knuckles get pulled down into the ground. And we can pop back up into our square pose. Let the hands go underneath the shoulders at this point. Elbows still looking back towards the thighs. But again, just noticing the change that happens just by moving the hands quite subtly, really. But have we got more support underneath the shoulders? From here, can we find the center of the wrists and pull down into the ground and let the ribs just slide up towards the sky? And then ribs can go down towards the ground. The arms stay straight, but the shoulder blades come together on the back of the body. So we're just working through that rhomboid area. Those lovely muscles that attach the shoulder blades to the spine. Can we let the ribs push the shoulder blades out of the way? Can we let the shoulder blades be pulled together on the back of the spine? This is good. So next time we come down, we're just going to come down onto our tummy. And just finding the root of the nose, let the elbows be up somewhere around the eye line. And we just find the point where the nose meets the forehead. And again, we're looking at these long structures on the back of the body, kind of top the shoulders into the sides of the neck. And they become super accessible here because we've got the elbows pulling down into the ground, long arm bones coming back through the sockets into the chest. And we just keep creating space here. And again, a little bit like our cat pose, we're just thinking about the spine, but of course we've got the floor in the way this time. So can we let the ribs draw back towards the spine and just notice what happens? We've already drawn the nose back into the back of the head, which will start to change the muscles in the neck. So how does that feel? You keep feeding the arms back through the sockets into the spine. And then we don't forget about the feet at the other end. Just feeling that the toes can get pulled into the ground. And that feeds the legs back through the hips, into the pelvis, into the low spine. So we've got support there. So we feel like the big toes are getting pulled away towards the wall behind you. Maybe the foot comes up off the floor. We can take the right foot up off the floor. But that happens because the big toe is being pulled away towards the wall behind you. If we just follow that movement, the leg naturally starts to leave the floor. The waist gets pulled long by the leg that's being pulled out of the hip. And it's an interesting one to play with, because if you change the idea of the movement to lifting the leg, and there's nothing wrong with that, but if you lift your leg up towards the ceiling, notice the different muscle firing sequences. And like I say, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just, what do you want it for? So if you want to do glute work or practicing your swimming, that sort of stuff, then yes, we do want to be lifting the legs. But by just changing our intention and feeling that the big toe joint gets pulled away towards the wall behind you, we elicit the same movement, the same response, but there's a lot more muscles involved. So yes, the glute is still engaged and involved, but it doesn't feel like it's working as hard because there's so many other muscles involved in this movement. And we do want that because that's rebalancing to the whole system, rather than just trying to individually isolate and manipulate muscles. So when the legs come back down to ground, just noticing what happens in the upper body as a result of that. For me, there's always a bit of a reshift and a rejig of things as the chest sorts itself out in response to the reassured connection of the legs into the low spine. So we can take the arms, elbows pulled down, as they always do, stops the arms getting dragged out of the sockets. They spend enough time doing that already. We want arms to be connected to the spine, mostly between the shoulder blades and up into the top of the neck in this movement. So we can let the right foot just get pulled away towards the wall behind you. And if it feels nice, we can pull down on the front of the hip. We can invite the sacrum into the low spine. And maybe the opposite arm can start to float from the ribs. So the test for this is that if you let the elbow float up towards the sky, it will take the chest with it. So it's moving as the functional whole, not just the arm wagging up and down out of the socket. And it might not be there. It might just be legs and then arms separately. Arms and legs together is a bit more further on with the journey. So, and you might find, as I just have, one side is super easy and the other side not so much. So it might take just a little bit more concentration. Or it may be that that side isn't ready yet. Again, we feel that the pull down through the front of the hip, the pull back of the ribs. Back of the ribs are very heavy into the ground. So this is barrel roll, sort of movement from the chest. It's basically front coil in very, very, very slow motion. So if you are a swimmer, it's an interesting exercise because you get to find out where the discrepancies lie. We'll do one more on each side. And again, we're just, that heaviness in the back of the ribs just helps us to stay out of the low spine. There's not really much low spine involvement here. Low spine just gets to hang out and be supported. It's good. So the next time we're coming down, just going to place the hands underneath the shoulders, finding the root of the nose again. Let the hands rest into the ground. Then that pull through the palm that takes the elbows back and down towards the ankles. Gives us this lovely long stretch in the back of the neck and across the shoulders, but it also sends the work back down into the tummy. And then from there, we can just increase that pull down through the hands, which lifts the ribs off the ground. And it keeps the tummy back in towards the spine. So again, we're not getting into that soggy W at the low spine. We are supported there. We'll take us back into our child pose again. We can tuck the toes under and make the body nice and long. This is good. So we're going to find our way up. There we go. This is good. So we're going to find our way up with into our square pose, just tucking the toes under and starting to introduce the toes to the ground. And we just start to find length through the feet. And we can make the circles with the snooker ball heel. Again, it's interesting to leave the knee on the floor for this one because we're looking for, that independent movement of the heel via the joint, which is the ankle, but we've got so much movement in the shin, or not, as the case may be. So it's just finding that heel that can move backwards and forwards as well as side to side. And can we make that heel into a circle? And then it may be that we can just take the knee off the floor, makes it an easy circle at that point for the foot. But you can feel the difference when the knee is on the floor and the circuit is closed, if you like, then we've got that limited range of movement, but it's limited just to that talocrural joint in the ankle. Whereas when the knee is off the floor, we can get much more into the bones of the feet or the toes, that long sort of toeage in the center of the foot. So it's a different movement. And it's just good to play with the two. This is good. And then we're just going to come around sitting. So just finding your way round. Oh, there's lots of you. Different room. Okay, so we're just finding the feet. And again, find the pelvis. We're looking for that orientation that we've had since the beginning. Sit bones get pulled down into the ground. And again, keeping the legs so that they're still engaged. We want the heels pulling down and the backs of the knees still engaged. So finding the sit bones, we think about the pelvis as a big ball. And just noticing those different parts. And again, we can use the interface of the foot to do that because your big toe joint pulling forwards and the inside of the heel pulling forwards will all fire the inside of the legs. So we're looking to find those long leg bones up through their sockets into the pelvis. And then we're looking to find that orientation of the pelvis so that we've got a space to grow the spine from. So we want to keep the knees where we can get hold of them. Maybe the hands around the shins can help. Because we're looking to, when we use the palms of the hands around the shins, that helps the long arm bones to come back through the sockets to pick up the ribs and lift them off the waist. And it takes us back into where the ribs come into, or the top of the ribs as they blend into the base of the ribs as they come into the lumbars. And again, we're looking at pulling the shoulder blades together on the back of the body. You know, because we're looking for that. There's a roundness to the ribs in response to the curve of the lumbars. So it's finding that space there. Can we find the uninhibited curves of the spine again? So the back of the pelvis naturally wants to curve under. So we find that. Then we come into the lumbars. Can we feel behind the pubic bone that the muscles there can pick up and lift us out of the pelvis? So we get space coming out of the top of the hip bones, space into the waist. And we feel that the underneath of the ribs gets sucked back towards the spine, because as the ribs come in towards the spine, they cause this nice thoracic curve. And then from there, we've got a head that can grow out from between the shoulder blades. At T7 is where the head starts to grow from. You know, and our modern life messes around with these curves and flattens them out in some ways. So we're looking for that again, that undulation. So when we breathe in, we've got this expansive ribs and the deepening of the lumbars and the neck curve, and then the breath out that returns us back into the original primary curve, which is quite round. So we're always looking to find that, the breath in that lifts the head, but lifts the tail at the same time. And the breath out that draws the ribs into the spine and makes that nice roundness. So it's a lot like our bridge pose again, you know, it's kind of variations on a bridge theme. If the hip flexors are grievous, mine have decided they are this morning, you can just bring the legs in. You can cross the legs and then just let the hips off for a minute. When we've got the legs out in front, we've got the heels pulled down so that the leg is connecting into the underside of the hip, into the sit bone. The more pull down we get with the sit bone, the more the hip flexor can let go. Theoretically. But we're looking to find that getting behind the big muscles on the front of the hips and getting behind and into the inside back of the pelvis and getting behind and into the inside of the spine. So we've got that pull down of the pelvis into the ground and that drawing up of the ribs. So we're creating space sort of behind the tummy button and above. So that space where we've got the tummy button pulling back towards the spine, but all that space between that and the ribs above, can we get behind there and create space and length? Now we're deep behind the guts of it all and the viscera and all the organs and everything that's in there. Can we get in behind that? And then if we let the hands just rest onto, if we let the chin, the jaw, let's get some words right this morning. We let the jaw rest on the back of the hands. And let the jaw really rest. Then the jaw can come back behind the It slings around the back of the head. But when we do that, the long arms can come through their sockets into the ribs. And then again, just we feel that lengthening and that dropping that happens to the ribs and low spine down into the pelvis, and the pelvis gets rooted down into the center of the earth. So again, we're moving in those two directions. My right hip flexor does not want to play ball with me today, so I'm just going to take the legs out of the equation completely. And again, we're just looking as the jaw comes into the back of the head, where is that neck curve, the appropriate neck curve? You know, we spend a lot of time with our heads out of the gravity line. So finding that place where the jaw comes into the back of the head and we're not flattening out the neck curve. We find that place for the head, that where it sits, you know, it's sitting on a ring of bone. So we're looking for that, and can we find that appropriate length down the back of the neck? And it may require that the ribs have to shift about underneath. Just a little bit. And you'll know when you've got it because it feels like the Jacob's ladder and the whole spine just drops away underneath. So we're just letting the arms come down. And just placing the legs wherever is comfortable so that you've got your sit bones. If it's nice to have something at your back, your sofa or a wall, something like that, then you can. And we're just going to interlace the fingers and just taking them up over the head. And it's like somebody's got hold of our hands and they're just pulling us up towards the sky. And we're taking the ribs with the arms. The out breath drops the ribs back towards the spine. And again, we're looking to see how much space we can get into this axillary process, which is under the arm down the sides of the ribs. If something doesn't move, something else has to. So be mindful of the head. It might start to jut forwards. And it's very easy for the arms to come up around the shoulders as well when they leave the ribs. So we keep dropping the arms back down so that they wrap around the ribs. It's like the arms are the top of the handle for the basket, and your ribby basket is all attached underneath. So when the arms get lifted, the whole thing lifts as a unit. And it's hard work, so rest when you need to. Hard work for arms, hard work for deltoids. They get very involved in this. They're also, you know, very connected down through the back of the body as well. So, but it's just this continual drawing of the shoulder blades back onto the back of the body. You know, we spend a lot of our time with our shoulder blades around the front, and it's not good for the posture. So we're bringing them around the back of the body, and that allows the ribs to have their natural curve. It allows the head to have its natural curve and movement. This is good. So we're going to give the shoulders a nice roll. And we're just taking the feet out in front again. Stay with your spine at with the sofa at your back if that feels good. And we keep the knees off the floor because we want those heavy, heavy backs of the knees to pull down towards the ground, which sends the long thigh bone back and pulls the shins forward. We've got this lovely heavy, heavy heel. So the initial movement is just the backs of the legs. And we keep finding the ischial tuberosities, or the sit bones. They are more level at the front and rounder at the back. So we're always looking to tilt the pelvis forwards ever so slightly. And we find the big toe joint in the inside of the heel. So if we keep finding the sit bone, we might find that the pelvis has got freedom at the top of the leg. And if it's nice to bring the hands underneath the jaw, just to lift the ribs out of the waist, then we can. It starts to turn something towards a forward bend, but it's a forward bend that happens because the pelvis is tilting at the top of the legs, not because we're just collapsing down through the spine and coming forwards. So can we keep that pull back of the sit bones towards the wall behind you? Can we keep the front of the ribs coming in towards the spine? Can we keep the jaw coming in towards the back of the head? And our forward bend starts to happen because we're moving in the two directions. We've got the spine moving in the two directions again. And we work through it frame by frame by frame. And if we feel that we start to lose it, or we're starting to disappear into our nice collapsed movement, we just come back to the center, start again. This is good. We're just going to bring the legs in, returning onto your back. Just laying down for a moment, just noticing how your spine feels from when you started. And again, just noticing the different curves of the spine. So we've got that lovely round back of the pelvis, curve to the lumbars, curve to the thoracic, and then we've got that nice space at the neck, and the jaw is free. So we just finish with the same breath as we started with. So just rolling the tongue and just poking out your tongue just a little bit. And we just breathe through this nice rolled tongue. And just taking 3 or 4 breaths there. And then just allowing your breath to return to normal. Just noticing how your body feels from when you started. You're going to give the fingers and toes a wiggle. And make some rotations with the wrists and the ankles. Taking the arms up over the head and the legs long for a nice stretch through your body. Bring the knees up to the chest, giving the knees a nice hug. Have a little rock from side to side. And then come over onto whichever side is comfortable for you. And just returning back up to sitting when you're ready. Just taking a moment to check in with yourself. Notice how you feel. Good.
Thank you, Kaz.
You're very welcome.
Happy birthday.
Can I have cake?
Oh, thank you.
Cake time.
Hannah wants some cake.